believe it or not, there's a difference between liberals and leftists. And a lot of people don't really differentiate, and I think it's because liberals and leftists voted together.
Yep.
And now that Trump's gone, they're not going to. But here's, you hate to see it. Oh, these poor, young 20-something DSA types. A lot of these people who are Democratic Socialists, this is their first foray into politics. They're in their early 20s. You know, we've had some people here on the show, and, you know, I'll be talking to them, and these leftists, and I'll say, you know, look, during the Obama era, you had with Occupy Wall Street, blah, 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 and I'll say a bunch of things, and they'll go, I was 10. And I'm like, oh, you were 10 years old, huh? Like, yeah, so I have no idea what that is. I'm like, okay. So they come into this thinking Joe Biden is their path towards getting what they want, not realizing that's not true. It's never been true. It's been 50 years, but they have no political experience, but they can vote. So what do we get now? Over on CNBC, student debt forgiveness isn't in Biden's annual budget. Here's why experts say that's not surprising. Well, this expert says that's not surprising because Biden is duplicitous and the Democrats lie in order to get elected. Not like Republicans don't, but Democrats do it. So all of these young DSA people thought they were going to get student loan forgiveness. They were like, we want $50,000. And then Biden was like, yeah, okay, we'll do it. And then they voted for him. And then he's like, well, we'll probably just do $10,000. And then he's like, nah, we're getting you nothing.
Well, by the way, do these young DSA types think that like Cindy McCain and all the establishment Republicans who couldn't vote for Trump and were voting for Biden, do you think they were voting for that agenda? No, absolutely not. This is not surprising to anybody who's been paying attention.
Well, we all know that Bill Kristol's a huge fan of student debt forgiveness.
Right? Oh, absolutely. It's the number one issue. Like, yeah.
And Joe Walsh and Adam Kinzinger and all of these other rhinos, they vote Democrat all the time because conservatives became socialists? Or is it because the establishment is the party of the ultra wealthy and they're going to sell you out to gain political power? And hey, you don't gotta like Trump, but at least Trump was like a Molotov cocktail in the system.
Well, and by the way, look, I'm no fan of Bernie Sanders, and I'm no fan of Bernie Sanders' policies. But the one thing I'll appreciate about Bernie Sanders is I actually think he believes in what he says. Now, I think most of that stuff is completely insane, but I respect the fact that he actually will walk the walk.
I don't think so. I used to think that. I used to be a fan of Bernie back in 2015-16. And then he just started flip-flopping. You know, so he went up on stage, one of the most famous moments, and he said, if you're white, you don't know what it's like to be poor. And I'm like, okay, that's a weird departure from where Bernie used to be when he was like fighting for unions in the working class. Now he's espousing woke garbage that makes no sense. Then he endorsed Hillary Clinton. And I'm like, okay, he's got no spine. You know, Bernie might believe these things, but a jellyfish with good ideas is still a jellyfish. And I'm not going to vote for it.
No, and I'm not saying the DSA types would have been disappointed with Bernie because Bernie would have run a campaign that would have been trying to attract those suburban women voters who just couldn't bring themselves to voting for Donald Trump. Which, by the way, I'm proposing a constitutional amendment that suburban women can no longer vote.
Yes.
It would automatically
only suburban women.
Only suburban women. It would fix both parties would be fixed immediately.
Awesome.
So it's not as what is it, the 19th? It's not
quite.
It's not as extreme as when people say
no, but if you're if you're getting your political opinions by watching Bravo, like if that like, and it's fine, watch Bravo, but if that's where you're getting your political opinions from, I think you really shouldn't be voting.
I mean, you know, I've been thinking about it quite a bit. Are you familiar with the Starship Troopers? Mm-hmm. So we've brought that up a lot, service guarantee citizenship. And I used to be like, no, people need to vote, but the Democrats go too far with it, right? They want everyone to be able to like sit in their chairs, eyes half open, and then a guy drops a letter on their chest and they go, just stamp, and then they hand it back. Like, there's got to be some effort involved. But now the more that I think about it, I'm like, there's got to be some skin in the game for voting. Because what happens is people will move into, you know, a city. They'll live in New York. New York falls to crap. So they'll move somewhere where it's nice, vote for crap, it falls to crap, and then they leave again. You effectively have a group of people that act like, you know, they go from place to place, destroying it, and then leaving. And then it's really difficult to repair things politically. Like most machines, it's really easy to break. It's really hard to fix.
Well, and fundamentally, you'd think this would be easy. I mean, if you're leaving New Jersey and New York because you hate New Jersey and New York, I mean, it's not because you suddenly decided that you can't stand the weather anymore or that you don't like the corner deli. It's because you hate the way that the state's been run into the ground. So yeah, move to Texas if you want, but don't vote for the same kind of politicians who ruined New York. And that's what we're seeing all across the country. Every one of these censuses where they're showing like, oh, well, North Carolina's adding people, Florida's adding people, Georgia's adding people. It makes me nervous because they're not moving from West Virginia. You know,
well, people are leaving West Virginia.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. They lost a ton of.
Is that a good thing? I think it might be a good thing.
As long as it keeps, I mean,
who are the kind of, so I read this story from, I think it was the AP, and it was like West Virginia saw the biggest exodus of any state.
Yes.
And I was reading it, and people were saying, like, I'm sick of being in this place where they just want guns and blah. I'm like, those people are leaving? That's good news.
Though I'll say this about West Virginia, and I told you I live a mile from West Virginia. I walk into West Virginia from my backyard. I think it's interesting when you find these enclaves of like progressivism in a place like West Virginia. They realize they have to live with their neighbors. They realize that they're vastly outnumbered. Like, conservatives are tolerant of liberals that they disagree with. You know, you go to Harper's Ferry, you go to Berkeley Springs, you go to Thomas, West Virginia, or Davis. There's all kinds of little enclaves of progressivism, and it's completely and totally accepted by the conservatives who run the state.
Yeah.
Go to places like D.C. and try to walk around with a Make America Great Again hat on. Like, it ain't gonna happen. Like,
well, this is actually a problem conservatives have. They're unfortunately too tolerant.
Yeah,
and that's true. The Democrats will try and claim that the Republicans are fascists and racist, and I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, I see these memes from the left where they're like, Republicans, they'll lie, cheat, and steal to gain power, and I'm like, they haven't had any power in how long? And they just don't do anything.
And they won't do those things. Look, Nancy Pelosi will use whatever tools are available to her, even if they cross the line, even if they're an abuse of power. I mean, look, her deciding to strip the committee assignments from Marjorie Taylor Greene for things that she said, not since she was in Congress, but things that she said before she got elected. The voters who elected her knew what she said, and the Democrats decided to strip her of her committee assignments. If a Republican did that, people would be up in arms. No Republican would ever do that.
What if a Democrat said offensive things while they were in Congress, like, I don't know, Ilhan Omar?
Ilhan Omar. Or Maxine Waters, who's been pushing crazy conspiracy theories for decades.
Republicans are too weak, man. The Republican politicians, they're I don't remember who said this, but they're more concerned about the opinion of the New York Times than they are of their own constituents.
Absolutely.
So what happens is Nancy Pelosi shrieks and her hair stands on end, like she's like floating around like a banshee, and everyone's just like, terrified. And then when Ilhan Omar does something, she calms down and, well, let's be reasonable. And the Republicans are like, that's not fair. Anyway, is that it? There's no screeching banshees on the Republican side who are going to float around and scream. So,
well, again, and by the way, this was I love President Trump, but this was a Trump fault. You hit the nail on the head. Too many Republicans care about what the New York Times says about him. It's like Trump would be talking to Maggie Haberman at the New York Times.
Yep.
And I'm like, why are you talking to Maggie Haberman? Like, she hates you. Pathologically, she despises you. She will never write a good story about you. And yet he still would, because he wanted to see that good story.
It's like sad cringe. It's like
it is.
These Republicans are desperate to be accepted by the establishment political class. So they beg the New York Times, I know you're woke, but I'll pretend to be woke a little bit. Not all of them. There's a handful of good ones. So we recently saw Thomas Massie, Marjorie Taylor Greene. They refused to wear masks. Nancy Pelosi fined Marjorie Taylor Greene $500, then $2,500. Yet she's on video in the White House with no mask on, hugging people, and everyone. Nobody's wearing masks. They're all partying. This is the problem. The Democrats have double standards. If they didn't have double standards, they'd have none at all. And the Republicans don't do anything.
No, absolutely
There's speed bumps for Democrats.
Absolutely. And by the way, look, when I heard Pelosi give her explanation for why that she was not going to remove the mask mandate, she said it's a question of the honor system. And am I just going to trust that these people have gotten vaccinated? Here's the thing. You don't have to worry. The CDC said if you've gotten vaccinated, you don't have to worry about unvaccinated people. So here's Nancy Pelosi standing there saying something that contradicts her,
the science.
The science. All these people talking about, like, we got to follow the science, follow the science. Again, if Trump had said something like that, it would be nonstop coverage for 3 days about how Trump is ignoring the science. Nancy Pelosi says it, and the media just brushes it off.
There was a study done in France, and TechCrunch wrote about it. It was this little-known drug called hydroxychloroquine. And Trump just passively said, the study's looking very great, it's looking good, maybe we'll see something. And the media went nuts. Donald Trump is recommending medicine. Oh, no, people are going to die. Bro, there's people outside of 7-Elevens giving vaccines. And I'm like, hold on, man. If you're going to undergo any kind of medical procedure, albeit a minor one, like a vaccine, go to your doctor first because, I was reading about some kid who had an allergic reaction or something, or it was like, was told by his doctor, he'd be like, be careful. I forgot what it was, something to do with eggs. I don't know. And there's a video where like these army guys walk into a 7-Eleven and then just like give the guy behind the counter a vaccine. And I'm like, you were complaining about Donald Trump talking about news from TechCrunch. And now this is going on. Can't you just say vaccines are great? Go talk to your doctor to figure out what's best for you. They don't do that.
No.
They will smear Trump and attack him in the most extreme ways and claim Trump's had to inject bleach in your veins. And then they'll come out and like do the exact opposite. We don't got fighters though, man.
No, we don't. And by the way, we never have. And the only good side of that is that's how we ended up with Trump. We ended up with Trump because after decades of not having fighters, the base said, okay, who's the one candidate that they don't want us to vote for? Trump. That's the guy they all hate. So we're going to give them the one guy they say we can't vote for.
Do you remember the Michael Moore speech from 2016?
Which one was that?
So Michael Moore's speech, he said that Donald Trump walks into these auto manufacturers and he says, if you move your cars overseas, I will tax you 30% and no one will ever buy your car again. And the people of Michigan heard that. And that's the first time anyone ever stood up to these companies. And so they saw Trump, now I'm paraphrasing, that people saw Trump as the biggest FU to the establishment, a human Molotov cocktail to be thrown in the system. And he was. And the system, boy, did they react. They flipped out.
Look, I always tell people I voted for Trump. There's a lot of policy things that I voted for Trump based on. But even bigger than that, I voted for him to be the wrecking ball taken to the system. And he accomplished it in spades. He completely and totally exposed the media. He exposed the establishment of the Republican Party. He exposed the dirty way that politics has been played in this country for decades and decades and decades. And we're never going to go back. The base of the Republican Party that voted for Trump let all the monkeys out of our cages, and they're never going to be able to put us back again.
Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to see the full show, come back to this channel, youtube.com/TimcastIRL, Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., where you can leave comments and super chat, and we actually will read your comments on the show. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and if you want exclusive members-only content, segments you can't get anywhere else, go to timcast.com, become a member, and we even have full bonus episodes. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.